And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I back to recap Survivor season 44, this time episode 5. Can't believe we're already at the 5th episode. Right? It is episode 5, right?
Yep.
Right, episode 5. That is crazy, right? I'm like thinking about as I said that, I almost didn't believe it as it came out of my mouth. I was like, how are we at episode 5 already? But we're here. So episode 5. What's up, Ryan? How are you doing? And what do you ultimately think of this episode?
Dylan, I can't continue this podcast until I ask you a certain question. What's your favorite Pokemon type, and do you like Lord of the Rings?
I honestly, I can't answer the Pokemon question, and the Lord of the Rings I've never seen. So unfortunately, I don't think that me and Kane could possibly be good allies here.
I was going to say I don't think you can work with them.
Yeah, it may be a struggle.
But to answer your other question really quickly, I thought it was a good episode. I mean, we'll talk about it, but there were some people online saying, well, because of Matthew's exit, it was kind of like this episode could have been an email. It wasn't, really exciting. Nothing really happened in the end, but I thought it was a great episode just to get to know these players even more.
Yeah. So my take is that I think it was the best episode of the season so far. So I'm like, I don't even think it was close. Like I'm one person who I haven't disliked this season so far, but I haven't exactly been enjoying it. And in terms of, and I always enjoy Survivor. I'm saying in terms of, compared to other seasons, I haven't exactly enjoyed the pre-merge that much. What I will say is that a lot of times it does take me a few episodes to get acclimated to the new cast and then begin to enjoy it. So I will say that I'm probably different from everybody else in that aspect. A lot of people just catch on fast and immediately like or dislike the cast. I usually take a few episodes to get acclimated, figure out who I like, who I'm rooting for, and then gonna go on from there. But all that being said, I thought this episode was really good. And for all those people that are saying that, it was a waste of time per se because the person that left was a medevac and not actual tribal council. Well, there's been several times throughout Survivor history where the boot has been a medevac and there's been no people, there's been no tribal council. I don't think we had that in the new era yet, or no?
No, and actually that you rub a really good point, because the only medevacs, or in Matthew's case, a medical quit, we've had in the new era is Jackson, but that was the premiere, so somebody still went home, and Zach. And then with Bruce, obviously that was the premiere, and Maddie then left. And now we have Matthew here going out in episode 5, but I guess due to the logistics, they decided to cancel tribal council. So Dylan, not only is this the first time we've seen this in the new era, this is the first podcast, and we've been doing this, Dylan, now for 5 seasons. We started in season 40, now we're here at 44, so it's 5 in total. This is the first time you and I have been podcasting together that we don't have a tribal council to discuss at all. This is the first one where we can say we can't analyze the strategy of did they vote the right way. It's all about Matthews leaving and then some other things that we saw. So,
it is pretty crazy, right? Because again, we've seen this in several seasons in the past. We haven't seen this in the new era. So it is interesting, and I understand why people would be disappointed that we didn't end up getting to see that Tiga tribe go to tribal council again. Again, even though I'm pretty sure that everyone knew that Josh probably would have went home in this scenario. But I think everyone was so ready for that tribal council to happen, and then it didn't happen. So I understand why some people are disappointed. At the same time, I mean, this is something that's happened in Survivor several times in the past. So it's not something that I could sit here and criticize and be like, this wasn't a good episode because this happened. Instead, I would actually say that because there was no tribal council, like you said earlier, we got a lot more time to learn about the characters. And that's something that I think that this season has, largely lacked. And maybe a reason why I haven't been able to get into it as much so far. I think that, the previous 4 episodes, there's been much more of a focus on advantages and on things game related, and not the people that were actually watching, right? And after that episode, I feel like we got a lot more personal moments from a bunch of different players. And as a result, I thought it was the best episode of the season so far. And it's not a coincidence that, I think, again, we've spoken about this so many times. We sound like such a broken record, but the best episodes, in my opinion, have come in the best episodes in the new era have come when you're letting the players dictate, the story and what happens and not the advantages.
Yeah, and for the record, I agree with you. Seems like people in the chat agree with you as well. And yeah, like I was just saying with Twitter, people are split. Like there are people who are saying it was kind of a blah episode, but then there are people, Dylan, agreeing with you and saying this was the best of the season by far. So I think it's the audience seems pretty split on this, and I do agree. We sound like a broken record, but let the players cook, let them play. It sounds like as of the late in the new era, the game has become more of the star than the characters and the players, and the players should always be at the forefront and they should be the stars of the show. And yeah, you're right. It's not a coincidence that everyone's saying, not only great episode, but this was the best journey that we had with Carol and Danny and Brandon. And if if every episode had a journey, or every journey was just a social strategic conversation rather than gimmicks and risking votes, we all will be looking forward to these journeys a lot more. So the evidence is pretty clear, I think, Dylan.
You would hope Survivor would learn in the future, like, all right, everybody's favorite journey came from the journey where you didn't give anybody any advantages. You just let three other people get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you know what? We normally go chronological order. We could still go chronological order, but since we have no tribal council to jump right to, I say let's just start off right here from this journey, right? Because in my opinion, this was the highlight of the episode. I think a lot of other people would agree with that. After the immunity challenge, we get Danny, Brandon, and Carolyn going on a journey. So immediately when this happens, I was like, first off, welcome back to the show, Brandon, who we seemingly have not seen any of since his crazy birdcage idol fiasco in episode 1. And so we finally got him back in the fold. And then we also got Carolyn and Danny as well, two players who have been basically the biggest characters on the season so far. So I immediately knew, we were probably going to get some good content out of this journey. And then the best part of it is that there are no advantages involved, because immediately when Jeff mentioned the journey again after the immunity challenge, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, how many advantages can we possibly get? We're going to completely lose track. And then finally we got one without advantages.
Mm-hmm.
And we got this amazing moment where Danny and Brandon are completely focused on, aligning with each other and getting to know each other basically, and completely ignoring Carolyn, who was sitting right there, and it was amazing TV.
Yeah, somebody was saying, this was one of the funniest scenes we've seen in this new era, or even honestly in a while in Survivor, just because it was so comical how they didn't even, again, we don't see everything, obviously, but they didn't even attempt to include her in the conversation, completely ignoring her. They were basically making an alliance like in front of her without including her. I think Marianne said on Twitter, like one time Lindsay and Drea tried to make an alliance right in front of her without even including her. And it just feels extremely awkward. And that's not really the best move strategically. And then the other funny part, though, is that Carolyn doesn't, sit quietly and she's like, okay, I'm going to observe this. I'll take a note. She's trying to insert herself, and she's like even calling them out, like, what do you mean people like us don't win? What do you mean? Like, are you going to work with me? I'm not going to tell you who I'm targeting. Like, Carolyn's not even giving them, like, she's trying to get in the conversation and it's not even happening. And it was just like a comedy of errors on all fronts. It was so funny. And Carolyn's obviously always amazing, both in real life on the show and also in confessional. So it was so funny to see, just the two of them completely oblivious to her in this conversation.
And I think that's like the main aspect of Carolyn's story in Survivor right now, right? It's like every single person that she comes across has completely underestimated her. And given the fact that there were maybe, three people left on the Tika tribe, and she was going to tribal council, and she was the one girl to two guys, and a lot of women have been going, maybe they just figured Carolyn's gone. They don't know what's going on the Tika tribe. And they literally made no attempt whatsoever to make an alliance with her. A lot of people were talking about, and Ryan, we just spoke about this before we actually hopped on the podcast, but a lot of people were talking about how bad of a look it was for Danny and Brandon, and it really didn't look great. I agree, it didn't look great. I also don't want to like make too much of it as well. I think the most important thing to take away from this, right, is that at this point was when Carolyn decided that she doesn't want to work with both Brandon and Danny at the merge. So clearly that's going to have a big impact. However, I don't necessarily think that like Brandon and Danny have themselves in huge trouble from this. I think that they will be in huge trouble if they think that Carolyn is going to work with them because of this moment. Whereas if they realize that, you know what, we made a great alliance, but like I don't really think Carolyn was in, and they, don't exactly tell her a bunch of information at the merge, then I think they'll be fine. I think the one aspect that could blow up in their faces if they just didn't realize that like they weren't including Carolyn at all. So I think that they still should be in a pretty fine spot. That being said, clearly Josh was the one who's about to get screwed because of this.
Well, yeah, like you said, she doesn't want to work with Brandon and Danny probably come merge. And by extension, she's not going to want to work with Josh either because she clearly missed her chance trying to vote him out before Tribal Council got canceled. I mean, we even see later she says, like she groans and Josh is like, Carolyn, why are you so upset? This is good news. And she's like, I wanted to vote you off. So she has no filter, completely honest with Josh. And yeah, she's not going to want to work with the guys if the guys try to get some type of meet Shield alliance together. She's not going to be for it. So she is going to probably want to rope Jam, Carson, and a few other people in. But yeah, no, it was just a really funny scene overall. And obviously we can say it's foreshadowing that it's going to have some implication here in terms of who's going to work with who, come the merge.
Yeah, for sure. I love this scene, and I think this was like a pretty big moment, and I want to bring it up like before we even get to questions because we're on the topic. But Jay says like, by the way, when Carolyn said she's gonna make the merge after that convo between Danny and Brandon, that sounded like foreshadowing for her not making the merge. What are your thoughts? To me, I thought it was just like I didn't think about that. Sometimes they do that where they like have like a dodo edit where they have someone saying they're gonna do something and then they're gonna be safe and then they get voted out. That was not what it sounded like to me. I took it as like she was the smart one in the situation, and they were not. And I think this is her story, right? She has been completely underestimated. People are completely overlooking her, and yet she's right there, clearly on what we've seen on the coming attractions for next week. The merge is approaching, and it looks like she is going to get there. So, again, I can't be higher on Carolyn possibly right now. I think she's playing a great game. I love her as a character, and she is absolutely must-see TV.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that she's the star of the show. I mean, most people, I feel like the consensus that I'm seeing is that most people love her. I think after the premiere, as we were getting to know her, some people were a little turned off. A few people, weren't sure how to take her. But most people now that I'm seeing love her either as a character or even as a player, or for most people, they love her for being both. Because even though she can be a bit kooky, she is very perceptive. She actually does want to make moves. And we've never seen this type of character before that is a character, but is also a really deep player and someone who knows the game and, plays online Survivor games as well. And, and that's why she took from this conversation, like, I'm trying to insert myself. They're not really giving me the time of day. I'm going to pencil this in, and I may want to go for them at merge time. And then conversely, you could also argue this cemented her wanting to take out Josh, because even though it seemed like her and Jam were getting back on the same page and they were going to work together, she could have easily said, you know what, I saved Josh last time. I want to work with Josh going forward because I don't think I can rebuild my relationship with Jam. So maybe Jam should go. But now that she sees the guys want to work together and they want to rope in Josh as another number, she's like, well, I definitely have to get rid of Josh now. So she's clearly thinking about things pretty deeply.
I would say, yeah. So I think the one spot that I would worry for Carolyn is that Jam's like is pretty onto her, right? Like he keeps saying that he he doesn't trust her. He's worried about her. He's not like, she's not who he thought she was. Like he thought that she was. So I think Carolyn was about to do a really good job of bringing Jam back in before Tribal Council ends up being canceled. That's, I think, going to be the determining factor for the rest of Carolyn's game. I think she needs to keep she either needs to get Jam Jam out of the game if he doesn't
Yeah.
if he won't cooperate, or she needs to just bring him back in and keep him close for the rest of the game. Obviously, it's ideal if you have at least one very close alliance member.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen historically in Survivor, the tribes that get whittled down all the way, those players historically do very well at the merge,
Mhm.
probably for a bunch of different reasons. Is
Yeah.
that if you're down to 2 or 3 players on your tribe and it's 3 tribes, those are easy to just kind of be the middle numbers, right, between 2 tribes that are kind of facing off, and then the others are like up for grabs. Also, those few members or 1 or 2 members of the tribe or 3 members of the tribe are usually very, very tight because they were whittled down all the way.
Yeah.
And they've all had more tribal council experience than everybody else in the show so far, right? So I think those are several reasons for it. Again, I think this, other than maybe Josh, I think Jam Jam and Carolyn are going to end up, doing pretty well in merge. So I got to see what happens, but I'm still holding out hope. And I still think that even though Jam Jam seems to be kind of onto Carolyn, that, maybe she's not just a character, maybe she could actually really play the game. I think ultimately they end up being a pair come merge. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and we said this on the podcast last week that Sarah kind of revealed in her exit press that, Jam and Carolyn, they are close. Obviously, they have their arguments, their ups and downs, like brother and sister. They kind of bicker, they make up, they bicker, they make up. So they're going to have their, pitfalls here and there, but they're going to probably, I would guess, come back together until maybe the end when one of them says, I have to cut the other for, strategic reasons. But yeah, I mean, we say all the time, like, we joke about the intentional matsing, having, fewer people going into merge at some point can actually be a benefit because you get overlooked. And I could see this happening for Jam and for Carolyn. The one caveat here is, Dylan, that this is the first new era season that had this mini swap. Because before we could say, other than people going on a journey, these tribes haven't really interacted that much other than people that got sent on that trip. So are they going to likely try to stick with their groups unless, people have some grudges, like, when Mike had the grudge against Chanel in 42, then maybe they'll go for each other. But now we have the whole factor of, where does Josh's allegiance lie because he swapped tribes? Clearly, he's not going to want to work with Jam and Carolyn because clearly they wanted to vote him out. But if he goes back to the former Sokas, he was on the outs there too. So what happens with Josh? Does Carson stay more loyal to Jam and Carolyn, or does Carson maybe want to work with Kane now and the other Ratus? And it sounds like from the opening scene when they were doing yoga, Jamie's like, oh, I like the Green Tribe way more than I liked Orange. So it's like now this is the first new era season where there's a lot of moving parts of the merge because people have finally swapped. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're on the topic of Tika and talking about Jam Jam, Carolyn, Josh, before Tribal ends up being canceled, we had what was another incredible scene in my opinion. Is Josh shows his quote unquote fake idol, and it falls apart basically on the spot, and Jam Jam notices that it's the beads from Tremail, and Carolyn realizes that it's the note that he showed her literally like the day before,
2 days ago. Yeah.
Not great for Josh. Josh is like the player who I almost feel like last season we got the Owen analogy where he gave the Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and keep falling over. This is almost how I feel for Josh, except for it's way worse than what Owen was. Owen was like, I keep getting left out of the vote. Josh is like, he has no idea where he is in the tribe at like pretty much all times. He is failing with the fake idol, yet he's survived. He's basically surviving to the merge because of a medevac, which is crazy, right? And I feel like, if you last until the merge, when you're really like, it's new life. It's new life for Josh in the game. If he ends up getting to the merge, I know next week is like earn your merge, but if he ends up getting there, then it really is new life for him, right? We've seen players who have really struggled pre-merge figure out a way to get to the merge, and then they're kind of forgotten about because more targets merge because everybody's together. So I think that, I'm curious to see what Josh does with basically a second chance in the game. And yeah, but that it was a pretty funny scene to watch him
I
getting
mean,
destroyed.
that was, I mean, we had like that second half of the episode. And again, this is why this was a great episode in general. Even the first part that we haven't even gone to yet had some pretty good moments too. But these were two like heavy hitters back to back. The journey itself, and then this whole thing with Josh and the fake idol. Dylan, I don't think we've seen since Eliza in Micronesia with the effing stick. I don't think we've seen a moment where, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people like flat out said to someone's face, that's a fake. Like that's not real. Like obviously we've seen people get duped by fakes a lot, but I can't remember the last time since Eliza where someone was like, that is clearly a fake idol. Jam Jam is laughing at this man in confessional. The beads are falling apart. Like, yeah, like I mean, I feel bad for Josh. Like Owen got that dodo edit with the Charlie Brown stuff, but Josh is getting raked with the bad
Yeah.
reads, with the fake idols. This poor man is just getting shredded by the edits. So, but it was hysterical just seeing Jam Jam just laugh at him in the confessional.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think you're right about that. Usually like if somebody suspects a fake idol, they'll like tell us in the confessional, but they won't like call them out on it, right? But I guess when you are on a three person
Well,
tribe, there's nothing to lose.
well, Dylan, you're half right. Now, it's not only that you're in a 3-person tribe; it's when you're in a 3-person tribe with Jam and Carolyn, you're going to get called out for it.
Right, right.
Like, any you could tell me if you're in a 3-person tribe, maybe with like Brandon or Heidi or Jamie or whoever, and I don't think they would be that blunt to Josh's face. They might just save it for tribal and vote him out there. But when you have Jam and Carolyn, they're going to just completely just rake you right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that it was pretty funny to watch. I have to say.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then I guess before we go all the way back to the beginning of the episode, I might as well just point out the Matthew pull from the game here.
Yeah.
Um, it seems like it was his decision to leave the game, despite the fact that like it was highly recommended that he leave the game. So it was somewhere like in the middle there. Clearly, um, how do I describe it? I would
Mhm.
say clearly he still has had a big impact on the game despite the medevac because, as you mentioned to me before we started podcasting, oh wait, Jamie has his fake idol still, and now that he's getting pulled from the game, Matthew, Jamie has no way of ever finding out that that is a fake idol.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Carson uh, basically thinks that Jamie has a real idol also, right? So,
Yeah.
so those two players have false information that they have no way of, until it actually happens, they have no way of finding out that that idol is fake. So clearly, that's going to have a huge impact on the game in some way, I would think. The other thing is just on a personal level, I feel pretty bad for Matthew that he had to leave the game. Obviously, look, not the smartest decision to climb up a cliff like that on day one, but it is rough that after another 10 days of him lasting, he just wasn't able to continue anymore. Especially because he showed a lot of promise as a player. So hopefully Matthew gets another chance along with Bruce. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I for one was not expecting him to be medevaced at all until they showed him after the challenge meeting with medical. I was like, I'm sure plenty of players have received medical attention after a challenge. We just don't always see it. But if somebody's gonna get pulled, we're gonna see it. So, again, feel bad for Matthew, and hope he gets another chance eventually.
Yeah, no, it was really fun to watch Matthew play because we said this in the first couple episodes that he's a player that has a lot of ideas. He played very hard, and clearly he has a lot of other ideas that he didn't get to implement. So if he does come back, maybe we'll see him try some new strategies. He was a player that, like I said with the plates analogy, he kept a lot of plates spinning, and we kept watching to see, are they going to keep spinning or are they going to crash? Because we don't really know how things would have turned out for him in the game without the injury, because he was throwing a lot of stuff at the wall here to see what stuck. And I mean, with the Jamie fake idol, with the first vote where he played the shot in the dark, not because he was scared, but for strategy, because he didn't want to reveal where his allegiances were, and he wanted to set himself up for future votes. So he clearly was playing hard, and I think deep down, he was a really good player that, he's a player that, had some potential. But yeah, I mean, climbing the rock, not the best idea. And I don't think, Dylan, we knew the extent of how bad this injury was and why he ultimately decided to pull himself from the game. I mean, I read his exit press. I'm not sure if you got to read everything or if the audience got to.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't see it yet.
so basically, and again, like you were saying, we didn't really know, and we didn't think for a while if he would get pulled or not. Because I said to you before the podcast, I was like, when they showed him at the start of the episode, like, he's talking with Carson, he's crying over his shoulder. I was like, this is episode 5, and each episode we see him nursing the shoulder in the sling. Is he going to be okay? Will he get pulled? And I've said for a while now, like, if he doesn't get out before like the merge, like if he doesn't get pulled soon, he's going to go to the end and win, because there's no reason we're seeing this much of him if nothing happens of it. What we didn't know actually was in that third challenge, if you remember, where they had to dig under the log in the sand to get to the puzzle with the spinning blocks. And I mentioned to you on the podcast, I was like, oh, he grabbed his shoulder and he was in pain.
Right.
But nothing really
That's
happened.
a good catch by you.
So what happened was he dislocated his shoulder after he fell off that rock, but he got put back into place. But then in that challenge with the sand, he dislocated it again. And even though it went back in the sockets, I'm just going to read you verbatim what he said, because if this is all true, this is a horrendous injury, and I don't blame him at all for leaving. And you're right, the doctor didn't pull him because it wasn't quote unquote life threatening, but the doctor basically said to him at that after the challenge, like, look, I recommend you leave. I'm not going to actively pull you, but I think you should go. And Matthew was like, I'll make the decision and I'll leave. According to Matthew, fractured my humerus, fractured my scapula, tore my rotator cuff, tore my labrum, and the cartilage got shifted where things had to be reattached and some stuff had to get removed. So clearly, with the two dislocated the shoulder dislocated twice, and then like digging in the sand, he messed up his shoulder. He even said like, and this is a funny little editing thing, Dylan, I didn't realize, and then I'll pass it back to you. He used to have like his hair like in the man bun.
Yeah.
I didn't notice this, but in the last 2 episodes, his hair has been down. That's because he said he couldn't lift his arm above his shoulder, so he couldn't like tie up his hair, because he couldn't even lift the arm up like past here. So he was in a lot of pain. So, but some people are gonna say, oh, it's a quit, like he quit, and it's like, I mean, he basically was medevac without being medevac. Like, that's a terrible injury.
Yeah, I mean, to have 2 fractures in addition to the the torn labrum and torn that's rough. That's rough. So I'm sure he had to have surgery and stuff. And honestly, like, his shoulder's probably not even 100% right now either. So I'm sure that took a really long time to recover. So I mean, for sure, that is pretty crazy that was what the injury was.
Yeah. The 2 other things I want to mention quick, unless you have anything else before we get back to the start of the episode.
Oh no, go for it.
Because Matthew had a lot to say in his exit press, and I think this fills in some gaps, because Dylan and I were talking before the podcast, and Dylan said to me, like, I feel like we don't know Orange that well. Like, Green's winning the most challenges, but we barely know Orange. And Matthew kind of filled in some blanks for us here. So because he didn't get to go back to camp after he pulled himself, people were like, so what happened with the idol? So he left with it, and people like Mike Bloom said to him, well, what would you have done with it? And Matthew said he was very close with Kane. So if he was able to discreetly pass it off, he would have given it to Kane, who is his ally. But if he had to publicly like hand it off, like if Jeff said, all right, hand it off to someone right now, he would have given it to Carson or Lauren to put a target on their backs. So that's what he would have done with the idol, even though he didn't get to go back to camp with it. So that was just one interesting thing he said as well.
That is interesting. I actually forgot that he went out with an idol, because I'm completely the advantages are all blending into each other for me. That being said, we may see another idol re-hidden soon, which is interesting. I would be completely okay if they just let that just leave the game. But that should be interesting to watch. And yeah, I think that's all for Matthew. But some other things that we could go back to in the beginning of the episode in terms of the Orange Tribe, which again, I mentioned to you, I was like, I feel like I don't really know them that well. Like, again, I said this earlier in the podcast, I said, when we saw Brandon go on the journey, I was like, oh, finally we get to see Brandon for the first time since we saw him a ton in episode 1. We basically have not gotten anything from Lauren since like the first episode. Kane, we get like a little bit of tidbits here and there about like him nerding out, like multiple episodes we've got it with him, with the sword, with him, nerding out over, with Carson. I'll go out on a limb and say maybe, they could be foreshadowing something here. I don't know, and again, maybe they're just trying to develop his character. Completely possible. I'm also curious because we have spoke several times about the chessboard that is sitting at tribal council, right?
Yeah.
And how they keep showing him saying, isn't the theme of this season perfect for us? Him waving the sword, him talking about all the knights, the tribal council, everything. I don't know if you remember the first episode, he looked at the chessboard and was like, wow, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's the one that ends up figuring out what that means, if it does mean anything. So just something to keep an eye on. I literally have no idea. That could be prediction, or they could just be trying to develop his character, which also is cool. Completely fine with that. But yeah, other than that, I mean, we've seen it a lot from Carson mainly because he was on Tika to start. But Brandon and Lauren, other than this journey before that, we have not seen much from Brandon and Lauren. We saw a ton from Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie switched tribes and Carson was on another tribe. So I would say like we're getting a few people on this orange tribe kind of out of the mix. And I feel like, again, while we've heard some of Kane's character, while we've learned some of Kane's character and some of that stuff, and, that's kind of all we heard from this tribe. That plus Matt Shoulder. We don't really know any of the dynamics on this tribe. So who knows what happens when they go to the merge, but I just thought I've been thinking that's pretty interesting that they haven't showed much there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because when a tribe in the early game, you always speculate like what would happen if they had gone to tribal council early. Like obviously the most famous example is like, Sandra wins Pearl Islands and the blue tribe Drake wins the first 3 challenges. If they lose one of those first few challenges, there's a high chance that Sandra actually leaves there and Sandra doesn't end up being a 2-time winner, butterfly effect, all that stuff. But like with this tribe, because of what happened in that first episode, there were so many moving parts with the shots in the dark, Lauren banking her vote, Brandon's idol play, that this tribe was very, very chaotic. And obviously we don't see all this because they keep winning. But what Matthew reveals to us is like, he was close with Kane. Carson seemed to be in good with a couple people. If they had lost again after Maddie left, there's a chance that Kane could have left. Maybe because like we see we're getting some tidbits of Kane, but Kane wasn't really fitting in at certain points and he voted against Brandon, honestly. But Matthew does say that, if a couple days had gone by and they lost recently rather than like early on, it would have actually been Lauren instead of Kane, because clearly after Lauren banked her vote and Claire revealed that to Matthew at the challenge, people weren't really trusting Lauren that much anymore. So that might be a hint for us possibly going into this fake merge or in the merge, whatever, where it's like, we haven't seen a lot of Lauren, but I don't think that means, Lauren's going to sneakily, make it super far. Lauren could be in trouble because of everything that happened with the bank of votes. And like you said before with Jamie's fake idol, Jamie thinks it's real. It's fake. And Carson also thinks it's real as well. So there's a lot of different things that could shake up because of the information. And there are still a lot of like idols and stuff in the game, but we went from having like 8 or 9 things, Dylan. We only have like we have like 4 or 5 things now. So it's less at least.
Yeah. Again, I hope they don't put that idol back into the game. It would be nice if we had less to keep track of. But, we did also hear from the Soka tribe early in this episode. Jamie says she thinks she's the best person to align with on the tribe. She's getting a little bit of getting a little Josh at it, a little bit, in my opinion. I don't think she's doing bad. She's doing poorly. Obviously her idol, once they're all on one beach, her real idol's gone. And then she only is the fake idol. So clearly there could be some kind of dodo edit being set up here. Also, she clearly does not know what's going on, right? Because she's saying she loves the tribe. She loves everyone on the tribe. She feels like this is where she was meant to be. But, Matt and Franny are kind of just like, I don't know what they don't really see eye to eye with her, it seems like. And she does not realize that Matt and Franny are like very close. So I thought that was a little bit interesting. Again, how much will all this tribal stuff matter when they are all on one beach? Not that much potentially, but that was interesting. Again, I don't really have too many thoughts on Jamie. I just think her and Josh are getting the we're confident, but we don't know where exactly we are type edit. So it's interesting.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting is like you brought up a very interesting point where you almost said like Jamie's taking over Josh's edit in that way, because Josh obviously had some confidence about his position, but he's on the outs. He plays it out correctly, but then now he gets caught with this fake one. So like you said, he's kind of getting into that Owen zone of, kind of getting the football pulled away from him, and he's kind of getting that Dodo edit. Jamie is getting more of the overconfident edit, and I don't know if her story arc is gonna end in her playing an idol confidently on herself, and she plays the fake one and she ends up going home. Like, I'm not saying that's gonna
Right.
happen, but at first I was like, oh, Jamie's super bubbly. She seems, like she's playing the shot in the dark because she's paranoid. She ends up getting it right. She has like her magic wand. She's like, I'm the best person to align with. I know where everybody is. I conquered orange. I'm going to conquer green. But you can't conquer green if you don't realize Matt and Franny are very close. So you go to Franny, his number one, and you say, I want to target Matt. And then Franny immediately runs and goes tells Matt. So it's like, yeah, you're right. Jamie's bubbly, but it's getting to the point where it's starting to get overconfident, and this could lead her misplaying in some way. And we saw her misplay in this conversation with Franny here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she definitely misplayed it. I'm not really sure if maybe look if Jamie wants to stick around with Soka, as I think they'll keep her around as a number. That being said, I think that if they want to get rid of one of their own, I feel like she would definitely be on the outs, especially because we've heard from Danny that he wanted to keep Matt, Franny, and Heidi and himself pretty tight. So I could see that being like a power four,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe Jamie being like the vote that they use, keep making her feel comfortable, and then eventually, when it's time, they let her go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of before the immunity challenge, I think really the only thing we did not discuss is Jam Jam and Josh they had a talk about like both of them coming out, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
how they bonded. So I thought that was it was again a moment during this episode where we saw more character compared to just idle play and advantage play.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that was great. I think that these personal moments are what makes the episodes great, and I think that there's a major reason why this episode was really good in my opinion, and it's because of these personal moments. That being said, again, I don't really see uh, Jam Jam and Josh working together again. I think that Josh is gonna attempt to go back to Soka. Um, now the funny thing is that let's keep this in mind. When he left Soka, he was like thinking that he was all in with them, and they were like, "Oh, we want to get rid of Josh." So I'm kind of curious to see if once they hit the merge, if Soka is going to be willing to use Josh as a number, or if they're just going to want to get rid of him right away. So that should be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if, again, I assume that Josh is going to try to reunite with Soka, but we'll have to see what happens.
I think there was a chance. I mean, again, like we said at the start of the episode, Jam and Carolyn, there was some trust lost there. Like, obviously, I mean, we went through this all last week, but obviously with Carolyn, leaving Jam Jam out of the vote, that wasn't super great. But it also wasn't great that Jam Jam tried to make her the decoy again, and he kind of didn't really respect her as an alliance member. So they clearly needed to rebuild their relationship. So there was a strong chance that if Josh played his cards right, he could have driven that wedge further. And when Carolyn's on the journey, he says, I have an idol, even though it's fake, and let's work together. Because Jam is like, look, if it's a 3-person group, Josh has an idol. It can only, and he doesn't know that it's fake yet. He's like, it can only be me or Carolyn going home, and I don't want to go home, so I have to throw her under the bus and work with Josh. Obviously, this all falls apart like Josh's fake idol did, and I think they're not going to work together anymore because Josh just lied to Jam Jam again. But there was a chance that they could have worked together. Now, what would have been interesting to see if Matthew didn't leave the game and if Josh didn't get caught with his fake idol, I think in the end, Josh still would have left anyway. I think after that conversation with Danny and Brandon,
Yeah.
Carolyn was not on board with working with the guys, and she and Jam would have taken out Josh. But I wonder in a world, Dylan, where different people go on the trip, or Carolyn doesn't, she maybe doesn't want to target Josh yet. There was a chance that Josh and Jam could have voted together, and it would have been interesting to see if Carolyn ended up playing her idol or not in that situation. Clearly, none of it matters. But I think there was potential for Josh to position himself better here. But again, it just did not work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, again, seems to be a common theme with Josh recently. Um, I don't know if I could see them working together in the future, at Merge again. I think
Mhm,
we'll have to see. Maybe Danny's open to working with Josh for a little bit longer.
mhm.
But kind of, I think Danny has his four that he wants to work with, so we'll have to see. Again, immunity challenge was nothing too crazy. Except for that Tika affirmed themselves as probably one of the worst tribes I've ever seen in my life. Um,
For the record, guys, they've won 2 out of 7. So,
yeah, they've been an absolute disaster. They cannot be. Yeah, they all have to thank Matthew and thank Survivor for putting the merge right now because because it's rough for them. Um, but I really think that's it for in terms of the episode. Again, no tribal council, so we didn't have too much to discuss.
mhm.
Anything else you want to mention before we get to questions, Ryan?
Nothing about the episode. I do want to get to questions. So if people have those, they can put them in the chat. I do want to quickly, and I'm sure some of the questions will be about this still, and I want to set the stage for the merge next week or the earn the merge, whatever. Because obviously we can discuss maybe who's in the best spot heading into the merge from each tribe. People are going to probably ask us who's going to align. And I also want to really quickly reset the advantages because I think that will be helpful for people. Because I know I'm so grateful that Mike Bloom and others, every episode, they tweet out, what the current advantage count is, just so we know where things are. Because I talk with some friends and family and they still don't know who has what at this point. So I'm going to really quickly reset it, and then people might be able to ask us, what might happen with it. So now that Matthew left with an idol in his pocket with him quitting the game, the only 2 idols left in the game are Carolyn and Danny's, because the 2 pre-merge idols that Carson and Jamie got are now expired because they're now all on one beach. So only Carolyn and Danny have idols. Brandon, Matt, and Jamie all have fakes. Brandon knows his is fake because he found it together with everybody on day 1. Matt and Jamie don't know that theirs is fake. They think they have a real idol. And the last thing we have is Lauren's extra vote because she banked her vote in episode 1. And then she has 2 votes now, like it was an extra vote to begin with. So basically 2 idols, an extra vote, and 3 fake idols. The only one other caveat, by the way, because I forgot about this until the preview, Matt can't vote again. I forgot Matt lost his vote twice at the first journey, and he didn't vote at the Clare Tribal Council. Now with this merge, especially if the tribe gets split into earn a merge, he can't vote again. So that's going to be very important.
Yeah, that's not great. That is not
It's
great.
not good. Not good,
Luckily,
Bob.
if things again, if they get split into like a 6-6 scenario or whatever the numbers fall, he has to hope that he's with his numbers in that 6 if he ends up going to tribal. Otherwise, it could get pretty rough for him. All right, let's get to the first question here from Nate. He wants to know: do you think Carolyn will be treated as a goat, quote unquote, dragged to the end, and she will ultimately explaining how she outplayed everyone during the final tribal council? What I would say here is, I think again, me and Ryan, we were discussing this actually before the podcast. I think that Carolyn is going to be here for the long run. I don't know if she ends up getting to the final tribal council, but I will say I think she will get to the finale. That's what I'll say. I think she'll get to final 6 or final 5, and then ultimately I could see her being like maybe a fair comparison's like a David Wright, right? Like somebody who like was completely like crazy at the beginning in terms of like like everyone was like, oh, who is this guy? And then all of a sudden he ends up becoming the power player in the game and the guy who you cannot bring to the end. Um, maybe there is a point that she hits towards the end of the game where people are like, oh, she's like no longer could be overlooked. She's legit. I honestly, I feel like she's already done too much to the point where like, unless Jam Jam and Josh are immediately out and nobody else can really figure out what she did pre-merge, then I think she's already almost like done too much to be considered a goat at this point. I think people will overlook her at the beginning of the merge, and it'll help her advance, which is why I think she's going to go pretty far. That being said, I think she will get to a point where people are like, "Oh, she's legit."
Yeah, so far what we've seen is she is constantly underestimated. People discount her because she doesn't do well at the challenges because of her some of her behaviors at camp, and people don't know if they can work with her or not. But like she says in that confessional, people don't really understand that I found an idol. I planted a fake one and got someone to take the bait. I basically controlled a vote and sent Sarah home. And she's positioned herself in a 3-person tribe where if they went to tribal, it was either going to be Josh or Jam. She was probably not going to go home there at all. So she's done a lot in the first 11 days of this game. Now, granted, what the jury cares about is what did you do, in the merge, and what have you done lately? But she can obviously point to many different things and say, I can own my game and I can show you examples of what I've done. So currently her story is people are going to discount her and want to take her far. Whether or not, like you said, people see her as like a David Wright and she starts to emerge and people realize, oh, we have to take her out. Or maybe they'll never realize that and then she'll shock everyone at tribal council at the end. We don't know. But like, it's clear right now that the only person, I mean, obviously Josh doesn't probably want to work with her after she blatantly said, I was going to vote you out, Josh. But other than him and Jam, I feel like most other people are not going to want to target Carolyn or aren't going to be threatened by her, which is a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Next question we got is from Jay. He wants to know, he says, a woman tends to be voted out at the Earn the Merge round in the new era so far. So, for example, Ellie, Lydia, Sydney. If another woman goes home in that spot, who do you think it'll be? I would say that because we've basically lost so many women so far, I think the odds of that are probably not that high, honestly. Because I think Lauren is probably good. Jamie, so here's the thing. I think Lauren's probably good because we just haven't heard from her at all. I think if she was going to be a part of the near term storyline, then we would have heard from her more. Jamie, maybe I could kind of see it. But Carolyn's not. I don't think Carolyn's leaving. And then who am I leaving out right now? Franny.
Franny.
I actually think that with again, obviously it depends on how the split is, right? Is because you could be in the best spot, but if you're split with the wrong people in the Earn the Merge, then you could be screwed. That being said, I would say probably most likely is Jamie because of her overconfidence, but I don't really have a huge opinion on this. I kind of think all the women that are left are going to be fine in the near term.
So I actually disagree. So I actually think that, and it is a very interesting trend. And obviously, I don't want to just adhere to the trend, but obviously 3 times plus is a pattern at this point. No, I really do think the only 2 women at the merge that I would say I feel fine with them in this next vote at Final 12 is Heidi and Carolyn. I think those are the 2 names I would say female-wise I think will be okay. Jamie, I can easily see being a Earn the Merge boot here because of her overconfidence and maybe her playing a fake. Franny, I don't think will be in trouble, but in case people want to target Matt, they may target Franny to get to weaken Matt. But I think Lauren could be in trouble here. I for some reason, I just feel like because Orange knows she lied about the extra vote, people are kind of onto her. And if Brandon if potentially Brandon doesn't want to work with her anymore, and Brandon and Danny are trying to rope in all of the big threats and all the big guys, there's a chance they could throw a vote onto Lauren here. So I would say, to answer Jay's question, if another woman does go home in this spot, even though it could obviously be one of the bigger guys, I would say either Lauren or Jamie.
Yeah, I could see it being Jamie. I'm going to stick with my guess on Lauren, but we'll have to see what happens.
Okay.
Also from Jay here, he says, who do you guys think will join the Meat Brigade Alliance come merge apart from just Danny and Brandon? Well, here's the thing. So we heard Danny kind of mentioning that he was thinking about roping in Josh, but then when we heard before Josh left the Soka tribe, he didn't want Josh there anymore. So I have no idea what to make of that. Obviously it's possible that happens. It would theoretically make sense. I don't really know what the plan is. I would guess that Heidi is always going to be extremely close with Danny for basically as long as this game goes. And, again, we haven't really seen Brandon enough to know what he's thinking and his place on the Ratsu tribe. So until we see that, it's hard for me to guess who he would bring in.
So here's the thing. So I mean, we're saying Meat Brigade because we assume they want to rope in the guys, but obviously it could also be strong females as well. Like
Right.
obviously Brandon and Danny could say, let's get all the physical people together and let's work as a group to take out some of the people who are not big physical threats, like your Carsons, your Carolins, your Jam Jams, etc. So this could obviously be Danny and Brandon. Danny's number one, who is Heidi. I think they could easily rope in Franny and Matt. Now, the thing is, I think Matt should be fine because if you're Danny, right? If Matt still can't vote, which Danny doesn't know, but Matt still has a fake. If you're Danny, you want to keep Matt in as long as possible, right? Because like you have Matt exactly where you want him.
Yes.
If you want to turn on him at final
You
11,
have to
9,
keep Matt
7,
in.
yeah, like you have to include Matt there because whenever you feel threatened by Franny and Matt, you can just say to people, let's vote Matt out. Oh, does he have an idol? I'm pretty sure he doesn't have an idol. So it's like he should rope in Matt. So I think Danny and Brandon are going to pull in Heidi, pull in Franny and Matt. From Orange, I was going to say Lauren because I think in episode 1, Brandon and Lauren were working
Right.
together, but now I just don't know anymore. So I think I think that will be one faction. And I think the other faction might be like your Carolyn, your Jams, your Carsons. Maybe Kane will want to work with the outsiders there. So those might be our factions. I feel like lately with the new era, it's like, oh, is blue and yellow going to team up against red, or are these two colors going to team up? It may not be about the color anymore. It might be more about like the physicalness of people that look to align, possibly.
Yeah. It is kind of tough to read. I wish we kind of had more of the dynamics in the Ratu tribe so I could figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But to move on to the next question, from Jay also, do you guys think that they're going to put the inheritance advantage back at the merge like they did knowledge of power in 43? Do I want them to do it? Do I want them to put inheritance back in? No. Do I think they will like they did in 43? Yeah.
100. You know for a fact this is going to come back. I would bet any sum of money this is like minus 500. Like they are going to put this back in the game. There is no shot their brand new shiny toy left the game before the merge and they're not going to put it back into play. I wouldn't be shocked, and now I'm getting on a tangent. I wouldn't be shocked if they put in the inheritance advantage at the merge and then if they throw in knowledge as power as well. Like that would not surprise me in the slightest. I agree with Jay. It's coming back either next week or in the official merge, 100%.
It's coming back for sure. And then I think last question here from Christian. He said, I think there's another twist at the beginning of the merge, like the inheritance advantage. What do you guys think? Yeah, I think so. Here's the thing. Again, luckily we are beyond the luckily we are about the we're beyond the hourglass twist, thank God. Right?
Yes.
The worst to ever do it. That being said, I believe it was the merge episode that the knowledge is power came back in last. Something came in right at the merge. I'm forgetting what it was. I feel like something came in right at the merge last season.
So, I'm just going through my memory quick. Gio was voted out 5th. Ellie gets taken out at the earn the merge point. Then Dwight goes, and then in a double tribal council, James and Ryan go. I'm sorry. Well, actually, no, Jean. So there was a gap in there. I don't know when James got the knowledge is power after Gio got voted out with it. It may have been the next episode. It may have been at the merge itself.
Right.
But yeah, so obviously James got it 1 or 2 episodes later. So in terms of Christian's question, it could come back now. It could come back at the actual merge. I do think we're going to see what we saw last season. No hourglass. I think we're just going to see. Well, wait. So there's 13 people. Or no, there's 12. There's 12. There's 12. Yeah. We're going to probably see them split into 2 without the hourglass. And then the losing group is vulnerable without the hourglass stuff. And only one of those 6 people can go home. That's probably what's going to happen. Maybe they bring this inheritance back now, or they maybe save it for the next week.
Yeah, one of the next 2 weeks, I think we see the inheritance back. But that is all we got for tonight. Just a reminder to everybody watching. First of all, thank you for watching live. Thank you for watching. If you're watching late, if you're watching whenever, if you're listening, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really helps us out. Also, be sure to comment any other questions you have, and we'll be sure to answer them. And can't wait for next week.
Dylan, I can't believe, like you said, we're on episode 5 already. the merge or fake merges next week. So we're basically at merge time. There's only 12 or 13 episodes in a season. So we're almost halfway there already. Can you believe it?
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.